Heads up, because you're in the Hoodwood. Welcome you to Sports in the Hoodwood for September 27th, 2019. Coming up this week is Jim Harbaugh really in trouble in Michigan. Who are the teams to beat in the MLB Playoff? I have NFL Week 4 picks, along with the Hoodwood Hot 5 with more real takes, and the Hoodwood College Top 10. All that, a slap, and a plethora of tapes, all packed in under an hour. Try to keep it under 60 minutes this time. And this week is Sports in the Hoodwood. All right, grab a cover, and let's go.
You're tuned in to Sports from the Hoodwood, the internet's foremost location for the most honest, unfiltered commentary and insight on the world of sports. Now, once again, here's Hoodwood's hometown hero, KJ Green.
Hoodwood, where at least this citizen of the Hoodwood is celebrating Minnesota Twins and the 2019 AL Central title. We've been a long suffering Twins fan, remembering that they lost 103 games not fewer than 3 years ago, and now they are on track to possibly win 100 games and outpacing the Tribe and winning the AL Central. I'm your man, KJ Green, welcoming you back to the Hoodwood for this final weekend of September 2019. It's going to be a bit of a truncated version of the Hoodwood, a few shorter segments, but we will have the NFL Week 4 picks, sans the Philadelphia Green Bay game, which I picked Green Bay and lost. That's right. I went with Green Bay, foolish me, trusting the Packers, trusting Aaron Rodgers, but he had never lost to the Eagles in Green Bay until Thursday night. That's right. Thanks for nothing, Mr. Rodgers. The Packers once again hosed me down again, and I have nothing to say about it other than Anyway, let's start from the top. And one Michigan coach by the name of Jim Harbaugh, Michigan man, former Michigan quarterback who had taken the Wolverines to Royal Heights, played a number of years in the NFL, then began coaching and was a very prolific coach at Stanford until Michigan said, "Come home. We need you." And being the dutiful son of Michigan that he is, he went home to Ann Arbor, and many people felt that Michigan was going to now be a true title contender, not just for Big Ten titles, but for national titles. This, unfortunately, has not panned out for Jim Harbaugh. His record, mediocre. His record against ranked teams, abysmal. His record against arch rival Ohio State, pitiful. I was doing research on this about Jim Harbaugh, looking up the stats, and I was stunned. Well, let's go with a little background first. Now, Jim Harbaugh, on this previous Saturday, took his Michigan Wolverines into Madison, a very formidable and hostile venue, Camp Randall Stadium in Madison, Wisconsin, to take on the 10th ranked Wisconsin Badgers. To say Wisconsin stomped all over Michigan would have been a massive, massive understatement. The final score was 35-15, I beg your pardon. But the game was nowhere near close. Wisconsin scored the first 35 points. 35 points straight. Wisconsin ran the ball and ran the ball and ran the ball. And oh, by the way, they ran the ball. And Michigan was helpless, powerless to stop the run. Wisconsin ran the ball down Michigan's throat. And the shots of Jim Harbaugh, time and again, looking bewildered, looking befuddled, looking like a man with zero clue. None. It was pitiful to watch. Sickening. And the numbers bear this out of a long term. It wasn't just a one-off game where Michigan just got caught flat-footed. No, there was a forbearance of this the week before. Army pushed around Michigan in the big house. Michigan escaped with a double overtime win. But Army, I mean, no disrespect to the Black Knights. They played a fearless, courageous game. But there should be no reason under Bo Schembechler, none, that Michigan should have been pushed around like they were against Army. So, a team like Wisconsin, a primarily running team, a power running team, was licking its chops. And they ran roughshod. Absolutely balled out of control against Michigan. You look at the stats. They're absolutely sickening if you're a Michigan fan. Wisconsin piled up 487 yards of total yards. 359 of them were on the ground. 359 yards rushing. Wisconsin had the ball 41 minutes. The poor Michigan defense got absolutely trampled. Run over, run down, and just run up on. And Jonathan Taylor rushed for 203 yards and 2 scores. And the game wasn't even close. Wisconsin marched up and down the field, daring Michigan to stop the run, and they couldn't. And the worst part about it was Wisconsin knew they couldn't. Wouldn't and couldn't. Jim Harbaugh, clueless. Now, the stats, even worse. And you say, this is a one-off thing. No, it's not a one-off thing. Michigan's 0-4 against their hated rival Ohio State. 1-9 against top 10 opponents. 0-7 as an underdog. 1-6 on the road against ranked opponents. 5 losses by 21 points or more. 3 of their last 5 losses have been by 21 points or more. Need I remind you of the absolute trampling, the absolute ass-kicking that Michigan got at the hands of Ohio State last November? Ohio State scored 62 points. Urban them just looked at them like they were just felt sorry for them. The last 3 games that Michigan's played against ranked teams, they're on 3. And they're getting their backs blown out. The average margin of defeat, 23 points. Over 23 points. And this is a coach that was supposed to take Michigan to the next level. This was a coach that was supposed to take Michigan to national prominence. This was a coach that was supposed to have come home as a prodigal son and took the success that he had at Stanford and with the 49ers and the pros and made it so much more in Michigan. He has not done it. And the schedule is going to get even more brutal. They still have to play Iowa. They still have to play Penn State. They still have to play Notre Dame. They still have to play Ohio State. And they're going to be underdogs in all 4 of those games. And they might likely go 0-4 in all of those games. Do you honestly think Jim Harbaugh should be able to keep his job if he loses all 4 of those games? I think not. The seat for Jim Harbaugh went from fairly tepidly warm to nuclear in barely a week. It's not going to get any easier for Jim Harbaugh, and he doesn't have any answers. They're already lining up the guillotine for 7 favorites to replace Jim Harbaugh if he gets fired at Michigan. They're looking to get rid of Harbaugh if he does not produce. Losing to Ohio State again is going to get him run out. You don't believe that? You don't believe losing like that is going to get him run out? Ask John Cooper. The otherwise credible coach for Ohio State in the 90s. Good guy. But he couldn't beat Michigan. Something like 1-10 against Michigan. And they ran him out of Columbus on a rail. If Jim Harbaugh does not win against Ohio State this year, and at least a couple more games against these ranked opponents, he's going to get fired. That's going to happen. We'll take our first time out of the day, come back and look at the MLB playoffs, who I think are the favorites to meet up in the World Series. Sports from the Hoodwood continues after this.
You're tuned into Sports from the Hoodwood, the internet's foremost location for no-nonsense commentary, insight, and opinions on the world of sports. Here now live in living color, black by popular demand, your host, KJ Green.
Now we go into Hoodwood. MLB season is winding down. The season finale will be Sunday, September 29th, with all the games being played starting at 3:15 Eastern, and the local game, whatever the local time is, but all the games will be starting out first pitch 3:15 Eastern. But it doesn't seem like there's going to be that much drama in the rest of the Major League Baseball season, with a majority of the playoff spots being spoken up for. Minnesota Twins, as I mentioned at the top of the show, clinching the AL Central on Wednesday night, pushing off the late charge of the Cleveland Indians. But looking over the statistics of the season, there's going to be at least 3 teams with over 100 wins. The Twins with 99 wins, sitting right on the fence of 100. Atlanta will need to win its final 3 games. A 3-game sweep of the now non-contending Mets in Queens to finish at exactly 100 wins. And then you have the NL Central with the hard-charging Milwaukee Brewers, who just clinched a playoff spot themselves Wednesday night, and still with an outside chance of catching and passing the St. Louis Cardinals, who they trail by 1 game. The Washington Nationals, the other wild card team, with 90 wins. And as I've said, and I had a colleague of mine say earlier today, he thought he was kind of an old schooler, but saying that playoff teams should win at least 90 games. And I agree with him. I believe, and have always firmly believed, that playoff teams should play at least 550 ball or better. If you can't win better than 55% of your games, why are you a playoff team? Now, I know. The first time my Twins won a World Series in 1987, they won 87 games. You snickered at them, but they beat the Toronto Blue Jays and they beat the St. Louis Cardinals to win the World Series. They were a good team that gelled at the right time. But this year, there are a lot of good teams. The Astros have won 104 games. The Yankees have won 102 games. Yeah, I know last week I talked about the bad teams, but this week, let's talk about the good. The Astros, I still think are the odds-on favorite to win the World Series. They have the pitching, they have the hitting, they have the defense. They bludgeon you with runs. They bludgeon you. They have a better than 250 positive on the run differential. They're at 271. And with pitchers like Justin Verlander and Garrett Cole, that is an extremely good 1-2 punch to take to the playoffs. They will have won 60 games at home. You know how many teams win 60 games at home? Very few. 1975 Reds come to mind as a team that won 65 games at home in the 1975 season. But those teams are rare. The Houston Astros will hold home field advantage throughout the AL playoffs and are just they're the game ahead of the Dodgers for best overall record, which will guarantee them home field advantage throughout as long as they stay in the playoffs. I like the way the MLB has restructured its playoff format, getting rid of the silly, insipid, whoever wins the All-Star game gets home field advantage. I have long maintained that the team with the best record should get the benefit of being able to stay home as long as they're in the playoffs. If you want to win the World Series and you you don't have the best record in baseball, you're going to have to take it from the team with the best record in baseball, I feel. And like I said, the Twins, on the cusp of 100 wins, only the third seed. Think about that. Think of how many teams are going to win at least 100 games and still not even be close to home field advantage. Now, the National League, of course, is the Dodgers' world, and we're all just living in it. The Dodgers have run away and hid with the NL West, winning by better than 20 games. But of course, you have their old foes, the Atlanta Braves, and the always lurking St. Louis Cardinals in the mix. But I still think we're looking at a rematch of the 2017 World Series with Astros and Dodgers. Those have clearly been the two best teams in Major League Baseball. But the perennial October postseason jinxed star-crossed Dodgers, they've won the last 7 National League West titles. 7 in a row. That's the kind of dominance you haven't seen since the Atlanta Braves in the 90s and 2000s. The Dodgers have hitting. They have pitching. Clayton Kershaw has had a so-so season. But still, the Dodgers are on the cusp of breaking a franchise record for wins. But still, they're going to have to answer questions all through October. Can they get around their perennial snake-bitten jinx? Call the curse of Kirk Gibson. The Dodgers have not won a World Series in 31 years. Since Kirk Gibson's fabled Game 1 home run stunned the A's and Dennis Eckersley. Can the Dodgers beat their postseason jinx and not only get back to the World Series, but win it? I don't think they can. I think the Astros are still the best team in baseball. They're the best run team in baseball. A.J. Hinch is seriously underrated as a manager. But I still think the Astros are the team to beat. And I don't think even my beloved Twins could be able to take a series from them. What I'm hoping against hope, is that the Twins knock off the Yankees in the divisional series and push the Astros to 6 or 7 games in the LCS. Meanwhile, in the National League, I think the Dodgers have what it takes to outclass their other National League opponents. The Braves, Nationals, Cardinals, and Brewers, while solid teams, all have flaws when compared to the Dodgers. I think it's going to be a Dodgers-Astros World Series. I think the Astros win in 6. I think the Astros are still the best team in baseball. And they could play the old Meatloaf song, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. 2 World Series titles in 3 years? Yeah, I think that's a pretty good run for them. They lost, remember, at the beginning of the decade, they lost 100 or more games 3 consecutive years. They're the first team in Major League Baseball to have 3 100-loss seasons and then turn around and have 3 100-win seasons in the same decade. But I still say the Astros are the best team in baseball, and they will prove it in October. We will take our second time out of the day, come back with NFL Week 4 picks and predictions. I'm already in the whole 0-1. Can I get better? Sports from the Hoodwood continues after this.
You're tuned in to Sports from the Hoodwood, the internet's premier location for no-nonsense commentary, insight, and opinions on the world of sports. Here now, the man with 100% certified fresh takes, your host, KJ Green.
All right, let's get it out and cracking. You are back in the Hoodwood. Let's go to the NFL Week 4 picks, and back in Mediocreville when it comes to the picks. 9-7 for the week, but the lock was correct and the upset was incorrect. I am 3-0 on the locks. I am 1-2 on the upsets. But with an endeavor to get better, here for your perusal, review, and inspection, the Week 4 NFL picks, with the odds being provided by ESPN for entertainment and comparison purposes only. I say that because if you bet the Lions and lose, it's your own fault. I don't pay bookies, and I know enough of them that I will not hesitate to rat you out to your hiding location. I will do that. As I've already mentioned, since this show is starting a little bit late this week, I've already gone 0-1 in the hole. I was going to pick Green Bay. Green Bay lost to the Philadelphia Eagles 34-27. So, also this week, the New York Jets and the San Francisco 49ers are both on byes. The New York Jets lost to the Patriots last week 30-14. San Francisco defeated the Pittsburgh Steelers 24-21. Let's start with the Week 4 Sunday picks. First on the docket, we have the 1-2 Titans taking on the 1-2 Falcons at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. 1 o'clock kickoff on CBS. The Falcons are 4-point favorites. Last week, the Titans lost to the Jaguars 20-7, while the Falcons lost to the Colts 27-24. Fast fact, these teams have faced 14 times in their history and have split the 14 meetings, each team winning 7 apiece. This is a tough game to call. Both these teams have the talent to be unbeaten. Both have the potential for big defensive plays, yet both have 2 losses to show for their efforts. I am waiting for that breakout performance by Matty Ice. And Marcus Mariota is living on borrowed time with Ryan Tannehill fast peeking over his shoulder to take his starting spot. If he does not perform this week, he may not get his starting job back in Nashville. I'm thinking that the home cooking will benefit the Falcons. The pick is Atlanta. Next up, we have the 3-0 Patriots taking on the 3-0 Bills. The game is being played at New Era Field in Orchard Park, New York. 1 o'clock kickoff. On CBS, the Patriots are 7-point favorites. Last week, the Patriots defeated the Jets 30-14. The Bills defeated the Bengals 21-17. Fast fact, the Patriots have yet to allow an offensive touchdown this season and have held opponents scoreless in the first half in each of their last 5 games. The last 2 postseason games and first 3 regular season games of the year. Now, the Pats have been walloping teams left and right, while the Bills have done what's been expected, throttling lesser squads in their first 3 games. Early control of the AFC East is at stake here, and as much as the Bills have to be admired for their strong play, they really haven't played anyone. And to be honest, neither have the Pats, but the visitors have a winning pedigree that the Bills just don't. And as much as you want to admire the Bills' plucky attitude and play, Pats are still the better team and will show the Bills have a long, long way to go. The pick here is New England. Next up, we have the 3-0 Chiefs at the 2-0-1 Lions. Game being played at Ford Field in Detroit. 1 o'clock kickoff on Fox. The Chiefs are 6-point favorites. Last week, the Chiefs defeated the Ravens 33-28, while the Lions defeated the Eagles 27-24. Fast fact, the Chiefs have not won in Detroit since 1996, losing their last 2 visits. Another interesting matchup here, the Chiefs' offense has been nuclear hot, while the Lions have been a quiet surprise, winning 2 tight games and tying a third. I don't think the Lions have the capability to keep up scoring that the Chiefs can put up, though. Matt Stafford is a grizzled vet and will test a sometimes suspect Chiefs secondary. Patrick Mahomes is playing at a scary different level, to be honest. This will prove to be an entertaining shootout with the visitors pulling away late. The pick here is Kansas City. Next up, we have the 1-2 Raiders at the 2-1 Colts. Game being played at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. 1 o'clock kickoff on CBS. The Colts are 6.5-point favorites. Last week, the Raiders lost to the Vikings 34-14, while the Colts defeated the Falcons 27-24. Fast fact, the Colts have not allowed a 100-yard rusher in 21 straight games. Now, the Raiders last week talked big going into the game against the Vikings and got throttled, while the Colts have quietly won 2 of their first 3 games and have been competitive in all 3. Now, I'm fast losing confidence in Derek Carr. While I've never been a big fan of John Gruden to start, his teams are just simply getting punked and pushed around. On the other hand, I am quietly impressed with the studious play of Jacoby Brissett. Now, Brissett will never remind Colt fans of the retired Andrew Luck, but his solid, largely mistake-free play have kept the Colts in games that they really shouldn't have been in, and they have won a couple that I thought that they should have lost. The Raiders will again be heading east, playing an early game, and as a weak West Coast team, they will likely be dead meat again. The pick here is Indianapolis. Next up, we have the 1-2 Chargers at the 0-3 Dolphins. Games being played at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. 1 o'clock kickoff on CBS. The Chargers are 16.5-point favorites. Last week, the Chargers lost to the Texans 27-20, while the Dolphins lost to the Cowboys 31-6. Fast fact, in being outscored by a record 117 points in the first 3 weeks of the season, it's a clip of 133-16, the Dolphins have allowed 18 touchdowns in 3 weeks, an NFL record, while only reaching the end zone 1 time. Plain and simple, the Dolphins are embarrassing themselves on a weekly clip. And they host a Chargers team who is plenty sore after a late game collapse last week. Now, most of the time I'm saying a West Coast team headed east for a 1 o'clock game is dead meat. But the Dolphins are just not competitive, period. And the Chargers should have enough to shake off a likely sluggish start to throttle the home team. Thus, I am confident in making the Los Angeles Chargers my lock of the week. Next up, we have 0-3 Washington versus 1-2 New York Giants. Game being played at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. 1 o'clock kickoff on Fox. The Giants are 3-point favorites. Last week, Washington lost Chicago 31-15, while New York defeated Tampa Bay 32-31. Fast fact, the Giants have 101 wins against Washington. Only Green Bay can claim 100 wins over a single opponent, that being Detroit. Now, Washington is looking pretty bad as they sleptwalk their way through an abysmal Monday nighter against Chicago. They now head to Gotham to face a New York team cheered by a spirited comeback and the solid debut of top draft pick Daniel Jones. Will Washington finally give their top draft choice, Dwayne Haskins, the reins to run their offense? I'm thinking not yet. The G-Men will be the benefactor. Even though they do not have Saquon Barkley, I'm thinking the Giants will have just enough to pull this out against a very pitiful Washington squad. Pick here is the New York Giants. Next up, we have the 1-2 Browns at the 2-1 Ravens. Game being played at M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore. 1 o'clock kickoff on CBS. The Ravens are 7-point favorites. Last week, the Browns lost to the Rams 20-13, while the Ravens lost to the Chiefs 33-28. Fast fact, Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson has thrown 221 straight passes without throwing an interception. Now, the Browns crumbled again under the weight and glare of the primetime spotlight, and now have to figure out how to slow down Lamar Jackson and the high-powered Ravens offense. The Browns, simply put, are an undisciplined lot prone to silly mistakes and mental errors that a veteran team like the Ravens will easily exploit. The pick here is Baltimore. We'll take a timeout, finish up the early games of the week, and go on to the late games, Sunday and Monday night games as well. And Sports from the Hoodwood continues after this.
You're tuned in to Sports from the Hoodwood, the internet's foremost location for the most honest, unfiltered commentary and insight on the world of sports. Now, once again, here's Hoodwood's hometown hero, KJ Green.
We're back in the Hoodwood, and we continue on with the Week 4 NFL predictions. The last early game on the docket is the 1-2 Panthers taking on the 2-1 Texans at NRG Stadium in Houston. 1 o'clock kickoff on Fox. The Texans are 4-point favorites. Last week, the Panthers defeated the Cardinals 38-20, while the Texans defeated the Chargers 27-20. Fast fact is that both teams had season-high marks for sacks last week. The Panthers' 8 sacks against Arizona was a franchise record, while the Texans notched a season-best 5 sacks. Kyle Allen threw for 4 scores as the Packers won their first game in forever, throttling the Cards, but the defense gets a bit tougher to face as they head to Houston to face a Texans team who are coming off an impressive road win against the Chargers. Can Allen do it again? I really don't think so. The Texans defense is a lot quicker than the plotting Cards, and I don't think that Christian McCaffrey will find the kind of easy running lanes he did the week before. Deshaun Watson is as dependable as the definition will allow, and he is a Drew Brees miracle drive away from having the Texans being unbeaten. I can't see the Panthers pulling another road win. Here, the pick is Houston. Now let's turn to the late games. The first late game on the docket is the 1-2 Buccaneers at 3-0 Rams at Memorial Coliseum in Los Angeles. 4:05 kickoff on Fox. The Rams are 10-point favorites. Last week, the Buccaneers lost to the Giants 32-31, while the Rams defeated the Browns 20-13. Fast fact, Bucs linebacker Shaquille Barrett leads the NFL with 8 sacks. He only had 14 sacks in his previous 4 NFL seasons. A funny thing happened to the Bucs on their way to a respectable 2-1 record. They gaffled up a 28-10 lead and yet still had a shot to win the game, but blew a makeable 34-yard field goal at the gun. That said, this is not the time to face a Rams team that is 3-0. Though Goff and company are not playing at optimal form, they are much stronger at home and playing better on both sides of the ball. I see James Winston running for his life away from Aaron Donald and his cohorts for the balance of the afternoon. The pick is the Los Angeles Rams. Next up, we have the 2-1 Seahawks taking on the 0-2-1 Cardinals at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. 4:05 kickoff on Fox. Seahawks 5-point favorites. Last week, the Seahawks lost to the Saints 33-27, while the Cardinals lost to the Panthers 38-20. Fast fact, Cardinal linebacker Chandler Jones has 43 sacks since 2016, the most by any NFL player over that span. Now, the Cards got waxed by backup. and they had the unfortunate luck of facing an angry Seahawks team who got embarrassed by a backup. I cannot see that happening again. Can't see the Cards cashing in mistakes as readily as the Saints did the week previous. The Seahawks don't lose back-to-back home games. The pick here is Seattle. Next up, we have the 1-2 Jaguars taking on the 0-3 Broncos at Empower Field at Mile High in Denver. 4:25 kickoff on CBS. The Broncos are 3-point favorites. Last week, the Jaguars defeated the Titans 20-7, while the Broncos lost to the Packers 27-16. Fast fact, the Broncos defense has yet to force a turnover or register a sack. Now, the Jags may have a hidden gem in rookie Gardner Minshew, who is fast looking like the swaggering presence that the Jags haven't had since the David Garrard, Byron Leftwich days. Now, they head to Mile High to face a reeling Broncos team that can't get out of its own way and is wondering why they took a flyer on Joe Flacco. The natives are restless, and the Broncos need a win badly. I like Minshew, and the running of Leonard Fournette is always reliable, but I don't trust the Jags on the road at all. If the Broncos don't get a win here, Vic Fangio's seat will get hot, really fast. The pick here is Denver. Next up, we have the 2-1 Vikings taking on the 2-1 Bears at Soldier Field in Chicago. 4:25 kickoff on CBS. The Bears are 2.5-point favorites. Last week, Minnesota defeated Oakland 34-14, while Chicago defeated Washington 31-15. Fast fact, the Bears are allowing only 68.7 yards a game on the ground. Meanwhile, the Vikings are averaging 193.7 yards rushing a game. Now, the Vikes bounced back from a tough road loss to whip the Raiders, while the Bears went into the nation's capital and ran roughshod. The Vikings are going to need more than just the hard running of Dalvin Cook to win. Kirk Cousins needs to get his mind right, and fast. He must play light years better. With the ball-hawking roughneck Bears defense lurking to take any advantage of any stupid mistakes Cousins makes, he has very little margin for error. If the Bears lean too much on Mitch Trubisky, they might be in just as much trouble. I hope I'm wrong here, I really do, but I'm never confident about the Vikings playing in Chicago. The pick here is the Chicago Bears. Now turning to the Sunday night game, we have the 3-0 Dallas Cowboys taking on the 2-1 Saints at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome in New Orleans. 8:20 kickoff on NBC. The Cowboys are 2.5-point favorites. Last week, the Cowboys defeated the Dolphins 31-6, while the Saints defeated the Seahawks 33-27. Fast fact, the Saints have won 5 of the last 6 meetings in New Orleans. Now, the Pokes are feeling themselves after slapping around the hapless Dolphins, but now the fun and games are over. A real road test in a real hostile environment. Now, the Saints won't have Drew Brees, who has had some solid games against the Pokes. Instead, they will lean on the redoubtable vet Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. Dak Prescott has been playing out of his mind in the first quarter of the season, but this will be the game that might be the real litmus test for the visitors. Knowing my luck, if I bet on the Pokes, they'll make a fool of me. And if I doubt them, they'll make a fool of me. I'll take the latter. I'll pick New Orleans. Finally, on Monday night, September 30th, we have the 0-3 Bengals taking on the 0-3 Steelers at Heinz Field in Pittsburgh. 8:15 kickoff on ESPN. The Steelers are 4-point favorites. Last week, the Bengals lost to the Bills 21-17, while the Steelers lost to the 49ers 24-21. Fast fact, this is the first time that both of these teams are meeting with 0 wins in between them. A pairing of desperate teams round out the week. The Bengals were getting hammered early, rallied smartly, then remembered who they were at first in giving away a hard-fought lead, then self-destructing deep in Bills territory to lock up the loss. Meanwhile, the Steelers are a shell of their once intimidating selves, but they are confident that when in doubt, bring the Bengals out. The reliable dog that they can kick around. Even with Mason Rudolph at quarterback, James Conner at running back, and Juju Smith-Schuster instead of Ben Roethlisberger, Le'Veon Bell, and Antonio Brown, the Steelers have enough, mentally and physically, to punk the Bengals again. The pick here is Pittsburgh, and there you have it. Last week, I was 9-7 with the lock correct. Thank you very much. And the upset incorrect. Overall, I'm 30-17-1. 3-0 on locks, 1-2 on upsets. We will take our final timeout of the day and come back with the Hoodwood College Hot 5 and the top 10 in the Hoodwood Top 10 poll. We'll also have Phat Dap Head Slap and the final word from the Wood, a very special tribute to a much admired broadcaster. Sports from the Hoodwood continues after this. Okay, normally we would be doing the Hoodwood Hot 5, which includes the Hoodwood College Top 10, but I'm going to pull a kind of an ESPN here. Due to time constraints, we will have to fast forward you to the next segment of the show. Let's just consider the Hoodwood Top 10 unchanged, and next week I will bring up double the number of topics for this particular segment of the show. So, with that kind of political business out of the way, and like I said, Clemson still remains the number one team. Notre Dame is not in the top 10 still, and Michigan is just falling fast out of the top 10 anyway. So it didn't matter. There wasn't that much change anyway. There was no big upsets anyway. So we'll take another quick timeout, reset everything, bring the rest of the show to you without any kind of further delay. So, like doing the ESPN thing, due to time constraints, we will fast forward you to the next part of our show. Sports from the Hoodwood continues after this. Keep up more music and let's go.
You're tuned in to Sports from the Hoodwood, the internet's foremost location for the most honest insight, thorough analysis, and unfiltered opinion on the world of sports. Now, once again, here's the man of the hour, After Hours, your host, KJ Green.
Hit the last in the fourth inning, and they are trying to hold off the Yankees, who have 299 home runs going into Friday's games. Chicks love the long ball. The Minnesota Twins have been hitting them all season with their Bomba squad. The head slap goes to the Texas Rangers, whose infield let a foul pop-up drop to allow their pitcher Mike Minor a second chance at recording his 200th strikeout of the season. Now, to do that in a tight game, the Rangers were leading 7-5, is Bush League. And it makes it look like players are only out for themselves and padding their stats. Minor, by the way, did get the strikeout and was taken after the game after throwing 126 pitches. Letting infield pops drop is just stupid. Now, with the Phat Dap Head Slap out of the way, let's go straight to the final word for the Wood. A part of my childhood and adulthood is over. Legendary Cincinnati Reds broadcaster Marty Brennaman wrapped up a 46-year career Thursday afternoon at Great American Ballpark. If you've lived in Reds country or have ever passed through for the last 4+ decades, Marty's voice was as dependable as a summer evening. Good, bad, or indifferent for the Reds, his calls were the soundtrack of summer and summer baseball, and baseball in general for generations in and around Reds country. Believe it or not, when Brennaman took over the Reds play-by-play job in 1974, he was trying to fill the shoes of a well-known name, Al Michaels. Yes, that Al Michaels, the one that calls Sunday Night Football now. Michaels was the play-by-play man for the Reds for 4 years before Brennaman and Michaels moved on to the San Francisco Giants job and, of course, to bigger and better things. Brennaman beat out 200 other applicants for the position. Now, he did have his stumbles. He called one of his first exhibition games in Tampa from Al Michaels Field instead of Al Lang Field. And he settled into the position that would make him legendary. His tell it like it is style spared no quarter. He wasn't hesitant to be critical to friend and foe alike. And he often drew the ire of players. But more often than not, his eloquent observations were spot on. I literally grew up listening to Marty Brennaman and his sidekick, longtime Reds pitcher Joe Nuxhall, wax eloquent about such subjects as their tomato plants, golf, and Elvis sightings, and some baseball observations in the ongoing game mixed in. But they were always a fun listen. Now, when I moved to Minnesota in 1997, I admit I was so spoiled by the calls of Brennaman that the calls of John Gordon on WCCO and the Twins radio network annoyed me. Now, I admit I was more preferential to the low-key style of one Herb Carneal, a Hall of Fame broadcaster in his own right. And I was pleased to introduce a work buddy of mine who was a big Reds fan to the sounds of Brennaman on our AM radio. You could pick up WLW in Minnesota some 700 miles away then, and you still can now. In 1998, I got a job at media conglomerate Clear Channel as a producer, and one of my jobs was to help run a show called Hot Stove League. I had the privilege of now working with a duo I spent countless summers listening to. Their easygoing yet professional style instantly put me at ease. Every time I'd be in the studio to work the show, I'd greet Miss Marty as Mr. B before the show and say, "Mr. B, how you be?" He'd smile at me and say, "Pretty good, you?" That winter of 1999-2000 was probably one of the most fun I ever had in radio. I got to run a board for the show and listen to countless baseball stories and arguments from Nuxhall, who I called Nuxie, and Mr. B. Listening to Nuxhall and then Reds manager Jack McKeon argue over who was a better hitter, Ted Williams or Tony Gwynn, made for a fascinating evening post-show one time. Meanwhile, Marty sat back with a wry grin, saying, "See what you started?" That will always be a treasured memory of that winter. In any case, for many a baseball fan, Brennaman was baseball in Cincinnati. He was a soundtrack, and for 46 years, through 3 World Series titles, thousands of players, thousands of games, seemingly millions of pitches and memories. He has been the voice for baseball in this area. Now, in the last 3 years, both Vin Scully and Marty Brennaman have hung up their mics. Baseball is a little quieter because of it. And while we are sad they are no longer plying their trade, their memories have enriched us beyond words. Thank you so much, Mr. B. And that is the final word from the Wood. With the music coming up in the background, you know that means your time in the Hoodwood is just about done. And I thank you again for your visit this week. The email for the show is kjgreen@blackbanditproductions.com. Send me emails on show topics, questions, comments, and criticism. Welcome your correspondence and try to respond to every email. You can get this podcast on a number of sites, including iTunes and Google Play. The show site itself is sports.podbean.com, which has the back catalog of all the shows. I'm also on Facebook at Black Bandit Productions Empire, Twitter as well at KJGreen20 and KJGreenBB as well as YouTube. So, that's that, fellow sports fans. Until next time out in the Hoodwood, I'm KJ Green.
Sports from the Hoodwood
is a Black Bandit Productions and Enterprises presentation
of a 551 audio and films production.